Okay, we start now. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. My name is Menna Mustafa. I am a strategy analyst at Boeing, and I lead the Accelerator and Innovation programs at the META region, that's Middle East, Turkey, and Africa. Today, I'm happy to have Abdulla Al Awani with me. He's the Executive Director at Tawazun Economic Council. He will be talking to us about how Tawazun is driving the UAE tech ecosystem forward. In this session, Abdullah and I will be talking and providing some introductions about the Aerospace Accelerator program, as well as Tawazun Economic Council. Then I will be asking Abdullah some of his insights, and then we'll head to the live Q&A at 1:30 before we close with our final notes. You can post your questions in the comments section. We will address it during the live session. And if you haven't heard the exciting news yet, applications for Cohort 4 are open. If you are a startup working in the digital, on a digital service or a solution, you can head to the link that we will post in the comments to apply now. With that, I will hand it over to Abdullah for introduction.
Thank you, Manna. First of all, I would like to introduce myself, Abdulla Al Awani. I'm the Executive Director for the Economic Program, which is the equivalent of the offset program for in other countries. Our role is basically to build partnerships with defense contractors, major defense contractors, and trying to find new solutions and create some kind of program in the UAE. So that's our role in as Tawazun. However, we'll come to more detail on why are we in this program and how are we thinking about this program as we will go through this session going forward. So back to you, Manna.
Thank you, Abdullah. So for those who are not aware, Aerospace Accelerated is a 3-month accelerator program. It's open for startups globally that are working on digital, for this cohort, digital solutions and services. The program offers 100,000 sterling pounds as an investment from the Boeing company, a curriculum that is customized for each cohort, and access to Boeing, Tawazun, and all the program partners. With that, I will start with my questions. And the first one, Abdullah, is what role is Tawazun playing in driving forward the UAE tech ecosystem? Sorry, Abdullah, I think you're muted.
Okay, so to answer this question, I think we need to go back in history, going back to 1992, when the Tawazun Economic Program was created and the Tawazun Economic Council was created. Since then the Tawazun has been in the center of the economic growth in the UAE, especially in the Emirates of Abu Dhabi. All of the programs that were managed at that time and developed by the economic program were innovative at that time in the 90s. So that DNA is still with Tawazun, and we continue to find new ways as we grow. We do position ourselves as an agile government entity, looking at how the ecosystem is changing, and we try to align ourselves to how the future is going to look like. And this is where we see ourselves today, is that the nature of the development is changing, the economic growth is changing, and more the startups and the innovation part of it is playing the major role in it. So we do want to be part of how we can shape that future, support and invest in it, and grow it as we can and incubate it. So that's how we see ourselves, and that's the role that we're going to continue to play with you guys as we go forward.
Thank you. The next one is why Tawazun has joined the Aerospace Accelerator program.
When we started to think about it, as mentioned in the previous question, is that we looked around and we saw how can we do it. And we don't want to do like a traditional accelerator program where we bring startups, invest in them, and just make them sit in a very nice offices and so forth. We wanted to do more an active participation in this kind of program. We want to make sure that these startups are looked after and as humans, as people trying to find support to their ideas. So the best program that we saw around was what Boeing was doing with the Aerospace Accelerator, because we saw the human aspect of it. We saw the people, I would say, aspect of it, because that's what makes the economic growth. It's people, it's ideas of people that they want to go forward. So we saw how the Aerospace Accelerator is doing. So it's kind of aligning this vision that we have in that area. And what we loved about it is that also how agile and how active it is. We saw that kind of connection when we were in London in June, and we saw how the community is growing. It's literally it's a small community that keep growing more and more. So we want to be part of that community, and we want to grow that community with you guys. What's exciting is going to be the cohort 4 is that how can we bring that kind of energy to the UAE and the region in general. So that's the way, that's why the reason that we joined the Aerospace Accelerator.
And we're excited to have you as our partner. Makes us very happy. The third question is, how do accelerator programs support the ecosystem and boost the economy as a whole?
I mean, it's no secret that what happened in the past 2 years shaped how people are looking at things, and even all the way from governments, major entities, major player, OEMs, everybody starts to think about how fragile our system is in terms of supply chain, in terms of things. So they started to see how, and we saw the solution was provided by the small startups and the innovation ecosystem. They were cheaper solutions, faster solutions. It's easier for companies, startups to shift their kind of thoughts. The agility is important in that sense. So we see the importance of such accelerator and playing role in the future more and more. And that's what also the nation of UAE started to see. And us as Tawazun, the government entity, we started to see. If we want to build something for the future, I think we need to support and accelerate startups, give those ideas a chance to flourish and develop right and guide, align, support. So that's how we see those kind of programs are helping the economy. And eventually in the future, the economic growth will be the end result of all of that. So if you do the right things and you create the right environment for startups to flourish, I think the ultimate goal definitely will be the economic growth for the nation.
Yes, I agree with you. Then what are some of the opportunities that the UAE has to offer startups around the world?
The UAE is in a unique position, and I think most of the news that you hear about the UAE is how they're planning for the future. The UAE and the region in general is driven by visions, which is 10 years, 15 years from now. Those visions, if you can see the underlying drivers for it, it's innovation, it's aerospace, it's AI, it's technology, it's all of that. The UAE is in the incline of development. We saw how much UAE is spending in terms of, or focusing in terms of AI, in terms of education as institutes in the UAE, in terms of R&D institutes, in terms of also changing some of the regulations to attract the right startups in the UAE by offering 100% ownership for different categories. So that's coupled with the entities like Tawazun and the network that Tawazun have, where we can have the investment side of it, and we see the networking side of it. That's coupled with that, I think we see there's a lot of offering on the table. There is the other side of it also, is the requirement. The region is hungry for growth. So that kind of growth will always drive requirement. And those requirements can be translated to challenges. Engineers always love challenges. They love to see how we can solve any issues here and there. And the region requires a lot of these solutions. So I think all of that can offer the startup the right environment to go forward. The regulations, the regulatory side, the investment side, those are information that it's always available in the news, is how much we are investing in these areas. You can hear every day there is a new investment happening in certain technology and a new company that keeps growing in the UAE or also regionally. So that's, I think, that's the regional and UAE in particular, I would say, support for these kind of startups.
Thank you. What is the state of the technical talent in the UAE, and how does the startup ecosystem attract the best talent? These are two questions in one question.
I think that's a very good question, and I think we touched on it in one of the previous one. Is that and it's all driven by what happened in the past 2 years. We saw how we were able to sustain as a nation, and we maintain the sustainability of what we're doing as an operational and so forth. With that being said, is that we see the UAE as I would say location-wise, regulatory-wise, and also as an ecosystem, as the right environment for this. And the government did a lot of, I would say, changes to attract talents by offering either golden visas for talents, creating lots of these institutes like the universities, technical institutes. We have a specific AI university that established 2 years ago. So that kind of environment will attract more talent. Of course, like I said, the golden visa is a very important area where special talents can have their own stability in terms of staying and working from the UAE. The 100% ownership also for certain businesses that offer a lot of stability for startups who's thinking to work from the UAE. Location-wise, that's also important. We are in a close proximity to almost, I would say, a couple of billions of talents around us regionally. So all of that gives us a unique positioning where we've started to work on it and start to attract more talents in that area.
Okay, what are the digital transformation trends that you're seeing these days, and what is Tawazun most excited about?
Okay, so I think definitely it's going to be AI, Internet of Things, and automation. Those are coupled together. I mean, that is very, very interesting area that we see. It's very hard to visualize how it's going to lead in 10 years from now with the growth, the pace that's happening. We see also that the line is now becoming more blurred between defense, aerospace, industry, with those digital capabilities being developed more and more and more. We see more AI working in everything. So AI became the most important thing. It's not the industry, not the platform, not the system. So the digital aspect of things is the most exciting things for us to see, and how it can, I wouldn't call it disrupt, but I would say it will drive the growth tremendously in a way that, in a pace that we never saw before. So that's going to be something that we are so excited about.
Thank you. I think we finished the questions earlier than where we expected. So I will head to the live Q&A right now. I have few lined up already. So let me start them. So the first one is, why do you think startups should come to the UAE? What are the biggest benefits of being in Abu Dhabi, Dubai, or the wider region? Abdullah, you're mute again.
Yeah. So I think, like we mentioned, we had touched on it a little bit, but I think we can go in more specific areas by explaining how the region is becoming more driven by the future rather than the past. With that kind of vision, you will definitely have room to be challenged as a startup, to come up with solutions and so forth. The region can offer lots of course, investment. That investment side of it is a very important aspect, where it can secure for startups the right capital to start working on their ideas. But that's one aspect of it. The most important thing is that, I don't know what's the best way to put it. It's like the region is becoming like a good playground for technologies to be tested, to be shaped and driven to the future. So I don't know if there is a better word for it, but that's the most exciting part for any startup to think about. That, of course, with the investment side of it and the networking side of it.
Love the description. Okay, the next one is thinking about setting up in the UAE due to our customer base. How do I even start thinking about this? Does my headquarter have to be there, or can I have a subsidiary? Sorry, I think, oh yeah, any things and barriers to look out for?
So the question is about the barriers or the location of the startup? Which one is it?
So it's how do I even start thinking about or setting up a business here in the UAE, and what are the barriers? I think it's a couple of questions, but then the other one is, does my headquarter have to be in the UAE?
Not necessarily at all. I mean, again, we believe in ideas. We believe in people with ideas. I think the best way to develop an idea is not to change the environment for that idea. But if a startup looking for, they believe that the region is the right, or the UAE is the right place for them to flourish or to grow their idea, then why not? We'll support them in that. And like we said, we have a lot of systems to support that in terms of investment, in terms of co-location, in terms of the regulatory side of it. So there is the support system is there. The idea is important for us than the location, because we do believe that those startups need to be international. They need to solve problems for the world, not for the UAE only. And that's the aim for this program. It starts maybe from the UAE for some startups who's already here to go outside, or if someone wants to come to the UAE, we are happy to support them in that. Or at the same time, they can stay in their areas and their idea can be shared and developed in the UAE. So it's up to the startup in that sense. So it's not about location and headquarter and so forth.
Perfect. And how do you think they can start? You know, where do they start when they want to set up a business? Who do they contact, or like how do they go about setting up business there in the UAE?
I think it's a very I would say the answer is very wide, because there's so many options. There's so many areas that they can look at. So it's hard for me to pinpoint, say, okay, this is where you need to go, because we have, as you know, maybe MENA, you live in the region and you know how many accelerators, incubators, programs that we have in the UAE. So it's hard for me to mention one or the other. But again, it's a preference for the startups, how they prefer and where they prefer. It's not a direction where they need to go for.
Right, and I think what I would add to this is, if, for example, you are the startup is working on a digital solution or service for this cohort, we have opened applications, so they can definitely start by contacting us, for example. Yes, but it depends on what type. That, as you said, it's a general question. Okay, the next one is, thanks for the briefing, Abdullah. I am very interested in your recent investment into Cranfield Aerospace Solutions, and as a startup company's Flux Art working on hydrogen-cooled superconducting motors, are you interested in the ability to bolt on investments into new technologies? I think these are two questions, I believe.
Investment, definitely we are open for investment. Of course, most of the investment that we will work with in this cohort is going to be looked at with some kind of evaluation criteria, and we look forward. But technology-wise, definitely we're interested in technologies that's going to be disrupting the future, creating efficiency, sustainability, and so forth. So specifically this technology, I'm not the expert in that, but definitely as an investment, yes, we do look at these things and we see if they fit within our strategy and how we're going to go forward. So the answer is yes, with definitely some more follow-up questions that we can touch on as part of this program as we go forward.
Thank you. Okay, the next one is, what type of investment for startups are we looking at, and do we become part of the offset program?
I think the question is that the investment is to start with the program that Aerospace Xelerated is looking for. So the first step is to go through the cohort, and we go through that kind of selection. So that's the first type of investment. Then it goes to what happens next. There might be some investments. There might be some other partners in the UAE who are interested more to invest also with that. So we have a network of investors that's also with us, that also interested in technologies, interested in growth, interested in future, and interested in the ecosystem in the UAE. So we are establishing that kind of network. So the investment could be from us, from the network, and we go for a plus, of course, the networking that we provide by having directly working. For example, if we have a technology of a certain company and we know that there's a company in the UAE require that kind of technology, we can do that kind of connection because we do, as Tawazun, have a great relation with the major OEMs in the UAE. The last sentence was the question about what, Menna? It was about offset program. Yeah. Yes. For us, part of what we're doing with Boeing is to be part to use that kind of offset connection as a program. Now, that's something that we can look at if we see more mature kind of companies, that how we can work that kind of, but it's more complicated than just a direct investment and networking that we can do. But definitely it's not a no, and it's a yes, but with certain conditions that needs to be addressed.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, next is, could Mr. Abdullah share some examples of startups in which Tawazun has already partnered with?
Tawazun, all of our life is we startup. All the companies we have worked with so many companies that we established as Tawazun in the beginning when we were tasked to establish defense companies, but that was like 12, 15 years ago. At the moment, we do have specific, I would say, investment fund that work with so many companies. I can't share the detail yet because those kind of information always have to be checked before we release them. But we do work with the ecosystem in Tawazun UAE. We work with the investment office of Abu Dhabi. We work with the Hub 71, all the startup ecosystem in the UAE. As an offset program, we did not have that kind of startup investment. However, that's why we are partnering with Aerospace Accelerator. So that's where we're starting our journey in terms of us as a Tawazun Economic Program investing in startups. And that's hopefully the good experience that we'll have to share maybe in the future.
Perfect. Okay. And the next one is, any thoughts on the current ecosystem for Metaverse and blockchain applications in aerospace in the Abu Dhabi and MENA region? It will be hard for me to find someone who can answer such a question. Because I'll be very honest, who knows what blockchain will bring to the aerospace industry? It's a very, I would call it out there kind of idea that if someone hits it right, there's so much disruption that's going to happen. Same thing with AI. So people can claim that they have a strategy for it and they can say, oh, I'm going to reach there, I'm going to do that. But in reality, it's not the case. The reality is that we have an idea. Let's test the blockchain technology in terms of doing something in the supply chain, for example. And we see where does that one take us forward. The vision is there. Just like AI, nobody can tell you what is the exact target for AI, singularity or whatever it is, but how do I use it in MRO? How do I use it in aerospace? How do I use it in defense and security? So it becomes a question. I think that's where we're trying to focus, and we're trying to be realistic about our investment and our approach. Even when we started to talk about this, and I think we had this conversation, Menna and the whole team of Aerospace Xelerated. The journey is starting from now, but we don't know how it's going to end. But at least we know what the next step is going to look like, and we're going to take it forward. So for me to answer such a very, I would say, a visionary kind of questions will be misleading to the company. But what we can promise is that those ideas can be looked at, understood, first of all, looked at and tested. That's what we can see that. And Abu Dhabi can offer that. The testing, the validation, the requirement building, all of that kind of question is more important than what we want as Abu Dhabi, because that's an open question, I would call it. Perfect. Okay, the next one is I saw Tawazun's investment into hydrogen aircrafts in the UK. Are sustainable fuel solutions of interest for you, and what? Sorry, I lost it. And what also are you looking at when it comes to sustainability?
Sustainability is one of the major things that we are looking at in everything that we do. We are. I think again, the last 2 years showed us that sustainability is the key thing that we need to do as a nation, as a region, as a world, and everything. So with us being also a small nation that give us the agility, but also we need to always look at better ways to sustain ourselves, to sustain the energy side of it, sustain the operational side of things. So sustainment becomes an umbrella of why we do a lot of these things, and how we can do it smarter without the reliance on so many dependency and so forth. So it could be the energy side of it. It could be also how we operate things. So that's another way that we can look at automation and operation. That's also, for me, fits within the sustainment side of things. So it is a big thing. It is something that we always focus on. Energy is the driver of any economic growth. So the more you find solution for cheaper energy, more efficient energy, that will be, I would say, an advantage for any nation, for any country to work on and to develop. So we recognize that as a nation, and we continue to develop that. Us as Tawazun also is part of this this government vision. We also look at what can also we do in this domain.
Okay, the next one is thanks Minna and Abdullah for this great fireside chat. It's really helpful and interesting. Any idea on who do we contact from Tawazun or Boeing to discuss more ideas on a number of opportunities? Thank you.
I'll leave this question for you, Minna, because we do have this program well set, organized, and how we can handle this. You guys are more experienced in that. So with this program, we are working together with you. So we kind of also trying to make sure that the conversation we have with the startup doesn't confuse the startup more than that. So I will leave this question for you, Minna, if you want to answer it. So that will be great.
Sure. Okay, perfect. So I think the easiest and simplest way to start with is contact us through our LinkedIn page, whether it's Aerospace Accelerated or even my personal LinkedIn profile. This would be the first start. We also have a couple of people who are working, or like few team members who are working on the program. You can easily find them on LinkedIn as well. So a message on LinkedIn is all you need to do to start contacting us. Okay, the next one is, can you please share some more insights on IoT and what you as Tawazun do in this, and how can you take ideas forward with Tawazun?
If we look at if we answer this question from the perspective of Tawazun, it's going to be very limited. And we were looking at these kind of solutions in terms of how we can do things more efficiently by relying on sensors and Internet of Things, in whether it's managing of assets or sensing remotely things and acting on that behalf, due to the limitation of the resources, the human resources we have. So that's a limited, I would say, a vision on how we see it. But if you take that and apply it on all the, I would say, the industry, the current operation, that will be the game-changing idea for us. So we don't want the startup to limit themselves to think about what us as Tawazun is trying to do. That could be a startup for whatever IoT is a project that we're going to look for as a launching pad and so forth. But we want also the startup to look for other application of this technology as we go forward in that.
Yeah, okay, perfect. And then I think it might be the last one, but let's see. We have filed 4 patents in the AI domain and very specific to the aerospace and defense sector. Would you consider this, or at minimum, a working prototype MVP is required?
I think for us, we're starting with startups. It's not necessarily for which TRL level or which development side of it. So each opportunity will be looked at separately. regardless of how mature or how early it is, the first screening that will happen through the cohort is going to be the benchmark on how we start from those ones. Some of the cohort participants, of course, will be in a different level of maturity. So those will be treated differently. But I think also the ideas that are more also developed, that can be looked differently. So we will look at each opportunity differently. We are agnostic when it comes to the maturity level of each technologies and how we take it forward from there.
Right. Yeah. I think the main point is usually the programs cover the whole spectrum. So, like for example, the Aerospace Accelerated covers the seed and Series A investments, for example. But then Boeing covers the whole spectrum as well as Tawazun. So it depends on what stage the startup is in. Okay, the other one is, I would appreciate if you keep these fireside chats frequent to keep the community engaged and updated. How frequent do you plan to have such sessions? I think this is something that I can take, Abdullah. We plan to have a very, interactive cohort, and we will keep these fireside chats frequent. What I can advise is stay tuned and watch our Aerospace Accelerated page on LinkedIn and on Twitter, and like look for the news and press releases. I know that we have another session next week and more to come on the future sessions. We have a lot of exciting surprises for the startups and the ecosystem in general. So stay tuned. I think this was the last question. Abdullah, do you have any final thoughts to share?
Yeah, I think first of all, I want to wish all the participants the best of luck. I understand how hard it is for someone who have an idea and worked hard on it and trying to bring it to life. So I think consistency, understanding, the gap is big between the startups and the big manufacturers or the big companies, and Aerospace Xelerated is bridging that gap for you. So what I saw from you guys as how you do it, that was an exciting thing for you. So I think with patience, with open-mindedness, with the right, I would say, attitude, we will have success hopefully for the startup. I wish all the startups the best of luck, even if they don't get the opportunity to work through the Aerospace Accelerated. They're more than welcome to continue pursuing their ideas. So all the best of luck, and thank you, Aerospace Accelerated, for having this program done in the UAE. That's something exciting for us. And it's just the beginning of what we're going to do, hopefully, in the future.
Thank you, Abdullah. I think for me, I would say that UAE startup ecosystem is a regional and a global leader in innovation. And as you said, the mass opportunities that UAE and the whole META region offer is just great and amazing. And thank you, Tawazun, for joining us and partnering with us in this cohort. We're excited to see how things will move forward and what type of startups we will onboard for this cohort. I would like to remind everyone that the applications for Cohort 4 are open, so please apply now, or there's also the Ask Us Anything session happening, I think, next week. Please join this for any questions that you might have. With that, I would like to thank you, Abdullah, for joining us, and thank the audience who attended, and thanks the team that is supporting us in the background. Thank you all. Have a good day. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.